Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I move the amendment in my name. Can I start by saying that the contribution we got right from the start from the First Minister was all focused on the past. What I want to do is focus on Scotland today and the Scotland of the future. Because I've come directly today from a conference on housing in Scotland, a conference that the First Minister pulled out of in order to hold this debate. And on his watch, Scotland is in the midst of a housing emergency, with rough sleeping persisting, a record number of children in temporary accommodation, homelessness at unacceptable levels, and the dream of home ownership unattainable for millions of Scots. That is a clear example of not successes but failures of almost 2 decades of SNP rule. So the question has to be asked, with housing fully devolved here in Scotland, what exactly has the SNP government been doing for the last 10 years since the independence referendum? And he said this morning, let me just say this and I'll take the First Minister's intervention. He said this morning that we need to move to focus on what we can do, not what we can't do. So what's this SNP government been doing for the last 10 years since 2014?
First Minister.
I'm grateful to Mr Sarwar for giving way. And what the Scottish Government has been doing since 2007 is building more affordable houses per head of population in Scotland than any other part of the United Kingdom. That is what the Scottish Government has been doing since 2007 and delivering 128,000 affordable homes. So perhaps Mr Sarwar would check his details and his facts before he poses the question to this Government of the issues that we've attended to when Labour members shout out to me, what emergency? We're focused on ensuring that we take the actions to improve the supply of housing. That's what this Government has done, and we're proud of the record that we've put in place.
Anas Sarwar.
So what did we declare a housing emergency for then, First Minister? Why then, in a conference of 250 leaders in the housing industry, did 247 of them put their hand up to say that the housing system is broken on this government's watch? Because what have they been doing for the last 10 years since 2014? And let's look at somewhere else where they have the full powers. Our NHS. On their watch, 1 in 6 Scots on an NHS waiting list, A&E in turmoil, and thousands of Scots being forced to go private for healthcare. So what have we been doing for the last 10 years since 2014? The SNP full powers over education and standards falling in our schools. And don't forget, it was this First Minister that tried to downgrade working-class kids during the pandemic when he pretends that child poverty is his great #1 mission. So what has this SNP government been doing for the last 10 years since 2014? They have full powers over justice. And our prison services are at breaking point. We have soaring court backlogs, and our prisons are over capacity. So what has this SNP government been doing in the last 10 years? And when it comes to the national scandal that is drug and alcohol deaths, when we have record levels of drug deaths and alcohol deaths going up in the last year, what has this SNP government been doing for the last 10 years since that referendum? Presiding Officer, the list of SNP failure after SNP failure goes on and on, with working Scots paying the price of their incompetence. And the truth is, the reason why we made so little progress over the last 10 years is because this SNP government has been leading a campaign, not a government. And they've been trying to hide their failures behind the smokescreen of the Constitution. And on their watch, regardless of whether you voted yes or no, your bills are going up. Regardless of whether you voted yes or no, you're stuck on an NHS waiting list. Regardless of whether you voted yes or no, education standards are falling. Regardless of whether you voted yes or no, businesses are shutting down. Regardless of whether you voted yes or no, opportunities for young people are being squandered. Regardless of whether you voted yes or no, you have a First Minister who'd rather laugh at the people of Scotland rather than do the important work in government. And no wonder he wants to spend all his time focusing on the past, because he wants to ignore the here and now. And let's talk about the future of Scotland and what it means for the people of Scotland.
Sarwar,
Nearly a decade.
Sarwar. Come on, colleagues. I think we can all agree that that is not appropriate. Let us hear Mr Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, I know they've had lots of doom and gloom in the last 2 months, and so there's a constitutional debate to cheer up the backbenches today, so maybe that's why John Swinney's focusing on it. But let's look at what it means for people across Scotland. Nearly 2 decades of SNP and Tory failure, but unlike them, I am optimistic about the future for Scotland. But that requires hard work to clean up the mess that's been left behind. Because over the last 17 years of this SNP government, every single institution in Scotland now weaker rather than stronger on their watch. So Scots don't want to hear about hypothetical debates about powers that the government doesn't have. They want to know what this government is going to do with the power it does have. Because this SNP used to focus on the future, but now firmly the party of the past, of failure, of decline, of incompetence and bad with your money. And now it's left to the Scottish Labour Party to lay out the positive vision for Scotland. And I truly believe there's nothing that Scotland can't achieve if we had two governments willing to work in the public interest and willing to put the people before party and campaigning. And that's why that important work has started, whether it be GB Energy, whether it be the New Deal for working people, whether it be a genuine living wage, whether it's a Scotland office selling brand Scotland to the world. And now people across Scotland can't wait for 2026, where we have an opportunity to bring together the talents of our people, our workers, our businesses, to actually deliver for the people of Scotland. 10 years ago, it used to be said by our opponents that we were the ones that were negative for Scotland. Today, it's them that are negative for Scotland and Labour that's positive for Scotland. And whilst they want to talk Scotland down, while they want to point somewhere else to blame somebody else, we're getting on with building a programme that delivers change for people right across our country.
Must conclude, Mr.
Because
Sarwar.
our country, and closing, Presiding Officer, our country can't wait for change. The people on the waiting lists can't wait for change. The young person struggling to get a job
Mr. Sarwar,
can't wait for change.
you must conclude.
So bring on 2026.
You must conclude.